Welcome to the AEN Stories channel.
I was 41 the October our marriage came apart, and the thing that surprised me most was how normal the morning looked. I woke to the avenue's early trucks rumbling past our apartment, to the smell of the cider candle Natalie had burned down to a stump the night before, to the dent her head left in the pillow beside mine. The day had this ordinary shine to it, like the first cold day after a long heat wave when people wear flannel even if they don't need it. I lay there and listened to the old building breathe. A pipe rattled. A neighbor laughed in the hallway. The city outside made those soft, waking up noises, the hiss of bus air brakes, the sibilant drag of a street sweeper, a distant siren that rose and fell with the same patience as a lullaby. It was our anniversary. I had a plan. I'm a plan guy. Ask anyone at the sheet metal shop and they'll tell you, I like lists. I had one on a yellow legal pad on the kitchen counter: pick up the flowers at 11, swing by the bakery, confirm the reservation for the private room at the old dance hall on Baltimore Avenue where the floorboards are so smooth they make you feel like you're gliding, check on the band, a trio, light on volume, heavy on standards, call Mrs. Franklin's pharmacy to make sure her refills are covered for the month. That last one never used to be on any list of mine. It found its way there 2 years back when Natalie's mother got sick. We're all, at some point, initiated into the brotherhood of invoices, oncologists, infusions, scans. If you've never tried to sort out a specialty pharmacy's billing department with a sick woman on speakerphone and a 12-hour shift behind you, I don't recommend it. But I did it, because I loved her and I loved her daughter, and because I could. I've always believed you do the thing in front of you. I made coffee, poured it into a travel mug, and wrote a note for Natalie because she sleeps late when she can. Happy anniversary, Nat. Don't peek in the hall closet. See you at 6. B. I drew a little saxophone under my name, a joke from when we were young and I still played on weekends. She used to say my mouthpiece smelled like pennies and mint. It felt like another lifetime. I tucked the note by her phone where she couldn't miss it. By 10 I was in the truck, the shop van with the dented fender and the rattle in second gear that sounds like a couple pennies loose in a coffee can. I stopped at Jarbo's Flowers, which has been in the family since Truman, and Beatrice, who's been making bouquets since I was in braces, handed me the one I'd ordered: white lilies, a few blush roses, and sprigs of eucalyptus because Natalie likes things that look like they came out of someone's thoughtful backyard. Beatrice winked at me. "You're the guy who always brings me receipts for the mother-in-law's prescriptions," she said. "Good man." "I'm the guy who keeps the air running in your greenhouse in August," I said, and we both laughed. I took the flowers to the dance hall on Baltimore. The place used to be a union hall, then a roller rink in the 70s, and now it's the kind of place where you can book a wedding on a budget and still have your grandmother say, "Well, isn't this lovely?" I'd put a deposit down for the private room that looks over the old floor, because Natalie likes to watch people as much as she likes to dance. The band was already setting up: a guitarist with a hollow body, a bass player who had his strings wrapped in something to keep them soft, and a drummer who wore tie even to sound check. I shook their hands and asked for Stardust at some point in the evening, which is a corny song but the kind that makes time feel like it's gone soft around the edges. The guitarist nodded with that musician's half-smile. "You got it." At noon I checked off the line about the bakery and called Mrs. Franklin's pharmacy from the parking lot. The automated voice offered me every option but the one I needed, and when I finally got a person she said something about a pre-authorization and a code I didn't have because the hospital never sent it. "I can't dispense without it," she said, and I said I understood. I always say I understand. I kept my voice calm because I've learned that yelling at people who can't change the policy just makes you the guy who yells. "You want me to call the hospital?" I asked. "That might help," she said, and I could hear the sympathy in her voice. "I'm sorry." I called. I left a message. Then I called Natalie's mom to tell her I was on it. She answered on the second ring. "Brian?" "Morning, Ma," I said. The first time I called her that she cried. The second time she rolled her eyes and said, "I'm not old enough for that." Now she let it sit between us like a good luck charm. "You busy?" she asked. "I'm always busy," I said. "But I got a minute." "You checked the mail this morning? I think my envelope ended up at your place." I smiled. She knows my schedule better than some of my co-workers. I'll swing by after I drop the cake. "Don't you let Natalie in that closet," she said, warm and teasing. "She's like a cat with a door. Tell her there's nothing there and she'll walk through it just to prove you wrong." "I know," I said. "I put tape on it. Official business." She chuckled. Then her voice changed, the way it does when she's tired and trying not to show it. "You're a good man, Brian." "Don't do that," I said. "You'll make me cocky, and this whole city will have to deal with me swaggering." "Go on," she said, and I could hear the smile. "I'll see you later." By 2, I was back at the apartment and the tape on the closet was intact. The note was gone from the counter, so I figured she'd read it and gone out. Natalie works in marketing for a chain of clubs downtown, the kind of places that call themselves lounges even at 2 in the afternoon. She likes the energy. She likes the clothes. She likes the feeling of walking past a line of people and nodding at the bouncer like he works for her. I've never begrudged her that. We're all allowed a place where we feel a little larger than our natural size. When we were dating, she loved that I played. I'd be loading my tenor into the back of my Accord and she'd be on the curb with a beer and a grin, calling me Coltrane even though I was good and not great, steady and not sublime. I quit when the shop offered me a raise to take on Saturdays and then her mom got sick and my evenings turned into the arithmetic of co-pays and casseroles and the kind of tired that lodges in your bones. I told myself it was temporary. Things have a way of stretching when you're not looking. At 4 I shaved again even though I didn't need to and put on the suit that fits better since I stopped eating gas station donuts at midnight. I tucked the reservation card into my jacket pocket, double-checked I had the little velvet box with the new ring, simple, a thin band with 3 small stones because I never felt like my money was all mine when the pharmacy receipts were in the drawer. I didn't mind. It felt like a vow extended, in sickness and in health is more than a phrase people say in nice outfits. It's 1,000 small decisions you make while nobody is filming, and you hope someone notices, but you do it anyway when they don't. I texted Natalie, "Pick you up at 6. She sent back a heart. No words. I drove to her office on Wyandotte, parked in a lot we used to joke was only for people who could afford to replace their tires, and walked up the stairs feeling like a teenager with a corsage. The lobby smelled like lime and printer toner. I checked my watch. It was 6 on the dot. I called. Straight to voicemail. Not unusual. Clubs are loud in every way. I lingered in the doorway, looked at the framed photos on the wall, a press shot of a room full of people with hands up, light dust in the air making the flash look like glitter, and felt out of place in my tie, like a schoolteacher lost at a pep rally. I called again at 6:15. Then I texted, "You good?" Another heart. I waited until 6:30 and then called her mother, because if Natalie wasn't answering me she'd answer the woman who can guilt her across state lines. "Haven't heard from her, Mrs. Franklin said," and I could hear the alertness in her voice now, like the old nurse she is could stand right up inside the sick body and say, "We have a problem. You want me to try?" Before I could answer, I saw Natalie across the street. It's funny how even after years you can pick your person out of a crowd by the way they move. She has a flow to her walk that makes petite women look taller than they are, a little ballet in the ankles. She was wearing a simple black dress and a coat that cost more than my suit, and she was laughing in that head tilt way she has when she's trying to be charming and not quite sure she needs to be. She wasn't alone. The man with her had the posture of someone who is used to rooms opening for him, clean gray suit, haircut that announces its price, a small scar at his jaw that would photograph well in a magazine profile. He put a hand on the small of her back to steer her into the restaurant next door. It was one of those places that strikes a match for every table even before the sun sets. They didn't see me. I froze like a deer caught by a 1,000-pound question. I could tell you I marched across the street and made a scene. I didn't. I could tell you I immediately knew what I was seeing. I didn't, not all the way, not at first. You know what you know and then, slowly, you know what it means. I walked into the lobby and watched them through the glass. He said something low. She leaned in. He touched her wrist and she didn't move it. The hostess smiled the way hostesses do at men who tip well. They walked to a corner table where the light was warm and pretty. He took her coat as if he'd done it before. She laughed again, That smaller laugh, private, the opposite of the one she makes when she wants to show everyone how good a time she's having. A person can convince themselves a lot. You can say it's a client. You can say it's a friend from high school who needed advice. You can say she's doing research because it's the industry. I stood there and thought each of those thoughts like stations on a broken train. On the third thought, he reached across and brushed her hair back from her cheek. And the next thought came without words. The hostess looked at me. "Sir? Do you have a reservation?" "No," I said. "No, I don't." I walked outside. The air had that early October bite. A kid rode by on a scooter with one shoe untied. A bus sighed. I called her mother. "Ma," I said, and my voice was not my voice. "What's wrong?" she asked, immediately. "I'm looking at her," I said. "Where?" "In that place next to her office. With somebody." There was a small, honest silence. She did not say, "I'm sure it's nothing." She did not say, "You're imagining things." She is better than that. "I'm on my way," she said. "You don't have to." "I'm on my way," she said again, the way nurses say, "Hold pressure," like it's a commandment. I stood there and watched the slice of their table I could see through the window. The man laughed and she put her hand, briefly, on his sleeve. It wasn't the kind of touch you give to a stranger or a client. It was the economy of intimacy, using two fingers where you once might have used your whole hand because you've learned you don't need the whole hand. The kind of touch that is memory. Mrs. Franklin pulled up too fast for a woman with bad knees and jumped out with the focus of a woman who has walked into ERs with more chaos than this. She took my hand. "Show me," she said, and I did, and we stood like we were waiting for a ride in a storm. When she saw, she pressed her lips together, which on her means she is holding back a flood of sentences. "Do you want to go in there?" I asked. I didn't know. I didn't know if I wanted to watch Natalie's face try to rearrange itself into innocence. I didn't know if I wanted to make the hostess comp a bottle of something because it would be the only kindness available. I didn't know anything except that the dance hall was 3 blocks away and the band would play Stardust tonight whether we were there or not. "No," she said. "Not like this. Not in front of strangers. Let's let her walk into the truth on our terms." I nodded. A waiter brought them bread. The man tore a piece and handed it to her like they were sharing something they shouldn't be allowed to, and she took it with the kind of smile you give someone when you believe you're seen. My stomach did a slow, ugly roll. I looked away. The sidewalk offered me nothing but black spots where gum had died in the sun. We didn't follow them. We went to a coffee shop and sat at a corner table with 2 cups we didn't drink. We stared out the window at a city that had the audacity to go on being itself. After a while, Mrs. Franklin put her hand over mine. "Son," she said, and her voice was steady in the way of people who have practiced steadiness. I knew. I looked up. She didn't flinch. "How long?" I asked. The question came out too calm. "Months," she said. "Maybe longer." I didn't want it to be true. Every time I tried to stop it, she told me I was meddling. "It's my life, Mom," she said, and there was no mimicry in it, only fatigue. I kept thinking she'd come to her senses. That she'd remember who the hell raised her. "You know I didn't like your father-in-law much, but he wasn't a coward. He taught her that you don't run from hard." She forgot. And I watched. She let go of my hand and then took it again, like she needed to reset her grip. "I hated it," she said, not bothering to soften the word. "I hated watching her lie to you. I hated watching you take me to my appointments and pick up my medicine and hold my purse while I argued with billing like a feral cat, and then seeing her put on her little dress and say she was working late. I felt like I was stealing from you, too, every time I said yes to help. But I didn't know what else to do. She's my girl. You're my son as much as any man I've known." I was trying to tell myself that if I kept the boat steady, she'd step back in. I was wrong. She lifted her chin. Her eyes were wet in that way that makes older women look like the girls they were. "I'm ashamed of her." We sat with that sentence. It sounded like a bell struck in a church with no people. Finally I said, "I didn't want to be the man who says, 'After all I've done.' That man is boring." "You're allowed to say it once," she said. "Say it now and then never again." I took a breath. "After all I've done," I said. It tasted like pennies. "Okay. I'm done." She nodded. "We're going to handle this clean. Not in public. Not with screaming. You hear me?" "I hear you," I said. We went back to the apartment. The tape on the closet was still intact. I took it down. I put the ring on the kitchen counter. I pulled the tablecloth for the dance hall from the shelf and folded it back up and slid it into the plastic it came in. I left the florist's card by the sink. Then I sat on the couch and stared at the photo on the bookshelf, the one from our second year, my arm around her in a generic Caribbean resort, both of us sunburned, both of us smiling like people who think the future is a train you can hear from far away and be ready for when it comes. She came home at 9. She set her keys down and saw Mrs. Franklin first, sitting at our table like a jury foreman. Natalie's face did that fast calculation thing. I could see her build and discard lies like a gambler cycling through hands. "Hi," she said, voice bright as a coin. "What's going on?" "You tell us," her mother said. "No adornment. No cruelty. Just the words." Natalie's eyes flicked to me. "Brian?" "I saw you," I said. "At Riva. With him." She straightened. There are moments you can watch a person choose. She could have denied. She could have said, "It's not what it looks like." She didn't. She deflated, like a lung losing air. "I'm sorry," she said. "For how long?" I asked, a question that seems to belong to this ritual no matter who performs it. "A while," she said. "Months. Maybe a year." Why? It's the worst question, because the answer never fits in a room. She rubbed her temples like she had a headache she could blame for everything. "Because it's quiet with you," she said. "Because we stopped being people and became schedules. Because I felt like I was sleepwalking. Because every song on the radio sounded like a dialed tone. Because when I get dressed up and walk into a club, he looks at me like I made the room. You look at me like I made dinner." It landed. I won't pretend it didn't. I also won't pretend it wasn't cruel in the way self-justifications are. "I look at you like you're my wife," I said. "I look at you like you're the person I promised to choose when the music is loud and when it's not." She looked at the ring box. She pressed her palm flat on the counter next to it like she needed to feel the cool of the stone beneath the laminate. "You planned something," she said. "For tonight." I nodded. "I'm sorry," she said again, and this time it sounded closer to the truth. "I didn't expect to be this person." Mrs. Franklin leaned forward. "You wanted lightning," she said to her daughter. "You always have. You think lightning is a weather pattern you can live in. It's not. It's a moment. You don't base a life on it. You base a life on the man who calls the pharmacy and holds your mother's purse and keeps the air cold in a greenhouse in August. You base it on the man who quit playing the thing he loves so he could pick you up from a bar with a smile because he knows you like to feel shiny. You forgot that." Natalie's mouth trembled. "Mom." "No," she said, and the word was soft and iron at once. "I can't walk this with you. I won't. You're my daughter. I love you. And I am not on your side." Natalie blinked like she'd been slapped. I felt it too, in the small place in me that always wants to protect her. It's a habit. It will be the last one to go. We talked logistics. It wasn't dramatic. It rarely is, in my experience. It was calendars and leases and who gets the good skillet and whether the couch should leave now or later. We did not raise our voices. She slept at a friend's house. Her mother stayed with me, on my couch, and in the morning I made her toast and eggs while she called the hospital and explained, with that particular nurse patience, that we needed a pre-authorization code today and not when the computer felt like it. She got it. She handed me the phone. "Give this to the pharmacy," she said, like handing me a talisman. The divorce, when it came, was a pile of forms and a few hours in a room with beige carpet. People expect a thunderclap. Mostly it's just paper. Friends took sides without saying so. A few tried Switzerland. Natalie moved into a smaller place nearer the clubs. I moved across state line into a duplex in a neighborhood where the sidewalks crack in a polite way and the neighbor on the left grows tomatoes like religion. The first week alone I learned the new noises of the house. The heater rattled on start. The neighbor's dog had opinions at midnight. The fridge hummed. I slept for 9 hours one night and woke up suspicious. My body asked, "What is this?" And because I didn't have an answer, I made one. I took the 10-hour case from the closet, the one that still smells like cork grease and 1,000 nights of bar smoke, and set it on the table. I ran a cloth through the neck. I pulled the mouthpiece from its velvet sleeve and rolled the reed between my fingers until it turned from wood to something like quick muscle. I put the horn together like I was praying. I blew a note and the room answered with a buzz that raised the hair on my arms. My embouchure was trash. My tone was there under the rust like a clean pan under burnt eggs. The next day I went down to the Blue Room on 18th Street because on Thursdays they do a sit-in. I stood at the back for an hour and watched kids blow scales like they were trying to outrun their own hearts. The house band did all of me too fast, the way bands do when they're bored with a song and want to make it hard. The drummer wore a hat like a French painter. The piano player's hands were small and fast. When they opened the floor, I didn't go up. I waited. Second set. A man with a beard like a cloud called Body and Soul and nodded at me. "You come here to watch or to work?" he said when I passed him. I laughed and stepped into the light. The first chorus was a mess. My fingers went where they used to go and found different notes. Then, somewhere in the bridge, the years fell away and I remembered what it is to talk without words. The drummer tucked his brushes in just so. The bass player rolled under me like a wave. The piano laid out in the right places and then dropped chords like breadcrumbs. I played a line I don't think I've ever played and the bearded man laughed out loud, a good sound, a sound like yes. The song ended and people clapped in that modest, Midwestern way, no whoops, just gratitude. I stepped back and my hands shook and I felt more like myself than I had in years. A kid named Marcus came up after with a business card he'd made on a printer that needed toner. "We do Tuesdays at the Green Kite," he said. "You want to sit in sometime? We could use another horn on the slow sets." I went. I sat in. Then I kept going. 2 months later, the guy who ran the kite asked if I wanted the Friday early slot with Marcus and his crew. "Tips and a bar tab," he said, and grinned like a man who thinks that's a fair price. It was, for me. I don't drink much, but the tab made me feel like I was getting away with something. We put together a book, I Thought About You. Naima. Lullaby of Birdland. Skylark. Misty if a couple wanted to slow dance and I was feeling sentimental. We got tight. We got better. Once, on a night in January when the wind made the door whistle, a couple in their 60s danced with a grace that made the room go quiet, and after the set the woman hugged me like I'd given her back an hour she thought was gone. During the day I worked the shop, tuned compressors, taught a new kid how to bend duct without leaving a kink. On Wednesdays I took Mrs. Franklin to the hospital and read old Sports Illustrated in the waiting room while the fourth did its slow work. We talked less about Natalie as the months went on, not because she disappeared from our lives but because grief makes its own weather and then moves on. Sometimes Mrs. Franklin would ask, "You dating yet?" And I'd say no and she'd say, "Good," and then, "Not forever." We cooked dinner together on those Wednesdays. She made biscuits without measuring. I chopped onions and tried not to cry. We're good at the small rituals that keep a person upright. I saw Natalie twice in that first year. The first time she walked into the kite on accident on a night I was on a break. She stopped like she'd found a ghost. She looked beautiful in the way glimpses are beautiful. "You're playing again," she said, and it landed in me with a strange mix of sorrow and pride. "Yeah," I said. "I'm happy for you," she said, and she looked like she meant it. Then she said, "He left," and then she clapped her hand to her mouth like she hadn't meant to confess. "The club guy. He said he didn't sign up for," she stopped. She didn't need to finish. "For the bills. For the pharmacy. For the nights where nothing happens and you sit on the couch and watch a bad show and it is, in its way, one of the holiest things you can do." "I'm sorry," I said, and I was, in the way you can be sorry for a person you can't save and shouldn't try to. She nodded. "Mom won't talk about you without crying," she said. "She took your side." She took the truth's side, I said. The second time was at the grocery store, in front of the frozen pizzas. She looked tired in the way that means her life is heavier than her arms. We talked about nothing. She asked me if I was okay. I said I was. It wasn't a lie. We parted like people who had once been symbols to each other and were now just people. In April, the Green Kite put on a spring show, all ballads. My set was at 7, which is the perfect time for people who have to be up early. Mrs. Franklin came, dressed like a day out was a church service. She sat with her hands folded on her purse. We opened with Stardust. I played the melody straight the first time through because you ought to respect a melody before you rethink it, and then I took a chorus where I stretched time just enough to make the room lean in. The drummer brushed the snare like he was telling a secret. When we finished, Mrs. Franklin stood and clapped, then cried, then laughed at herself for crying. After, she hugged me hard enough to make my back pop and said, "That's my boy." Marcus elbowed me. "Your mom?" he whispered. I nodded. "Let him have that. It's not a lie." On the walk home, under a sky that looked like someone had rubbed chalk into it, I realized that for the first time in a long time, the tired I felt was the good kind, the kind you earn doing something that feeds you back. The apartment smelled like reed oil and onions and the damp of a sax case. I took the horn apart and wiped it down and laid the reed on the stand like a relic. I thought about the dance hall and the band I'd hired and the way they probably played Stardust that night for somebody else's anniversary and how the song is big enough to hold 1,000 stories, ours, theirs, the ones to come. I thought about the life I had built out of the scraps of the one I lost. It isn't a grand story, I don't think. It's just a man who did the next thing and then the next, who found his way back to the instrument that lets him say what he can't otherwise get out. Sometimes, late, when the city goes quiet in that peculiarly Midwestern way, I take the horn from its stand and play soft enough not to wake the neighbors. A line, then another. The room answers. There is no audience for it. There doesn't need to be. Music is conversation, sure, but sometimes it's also a promise you make to yourself, that you will be the kind of person who chooses the steady over the spectacular, the flavor over the flash, the slow song when the room wants a banger. I wasn't always that man. I am trying to be him now. On our old bookshelf, I keep the photo from the resort turned face down. Not out of anger. Out of respect. That was us then. This is me now. On top of the frame sits a little card Beatrice tucked into the bouquet the day I picked it up and never delivered. For Natalie, it says, in looping script. Sometimes I think about giving it back to the flowers, letting it disappear into someone else's celebration. Mostly I keep it as a reminder that love isn't wasted just because it ends. It's used. It becomes something else, music, kindness, a phone call to a pharmacy for a woman who is not your mother but calls you son. In the dance hall on Baltimore, the floorboards still shine. Some other couple is there tonight, making vows they will keep and break in 1,000 miniature ways. Maybe they hired the same trio. Maybe the guitarist will nod when he sees the nervous man and think, "I got you, friend." They'll play Stardust and time will go soft around the edges, and someone at the bar will tell a stranger that the song is corny and still perfect, and they'll both be right. I'll be a few blocks away, on a small stage under a neon sign, horn in my hands, doing what I came here to do, breathe in, breathe out, turn air into sound, and, for a few measures, be exactly where I'm supposed to be. Thank you for listening my story. If you want more raw, real, and gripping stories like this one, subscribe to the AEN Stories channel. Your support keeps these stories alive.